For my next project, I'm going to use a little bit of lamination trickery. If you have my book, there's a chapter on lamination trickery. I'm going to use one of those techniques. I'm going to build a cylinder to surround this oil lamp burner. This is a unit that I purchased from Craft Supplies in Provo, Utah. And I'm going to use a cylinder, create a cylinder to surround this, and I'll put a floating base in the bottom of it. I may make several at the same time. So follow along, we'll do a little bit of lamination trickery. To get started on this project, I'm going to cut some cross-cut some pieces of both Purple Heart and Yellow Heart. I'm lucky enough to have some very wide boards. That's going to work out great. I'll need to have staves tall enough to encompass this tank on this lamp, and just to be on the safe side, I'll put together a stave construction about 4 inches tall. That should be plenty. So the first step is to cross-cut these pieces. They're 4 inches long. Now I'm making 2 cuts on the 2 edges just to make it easy to resaw these into 2 thin boards. They'll have that ridge that'll have to be cleaned up. That'll be done by running these through the drum sander. I'll put 36 grit paper on there to get started. I'll end up with 120 grit surfaces. Now I'm laminating these boards back together in pairs. I'm going to do 3 pairs all in one glue job. Here I'm just matching them up. You can see I've got some blue tape to prevent them sticking together. And on either side of this stack of pairs, 2 pieces of MDF, again protected with blue tape. There's a lot of glue surface here. It takes a lot of pressure to get all that excess glue out, so don't spare the clamps. Now the next morning, because I will let this sit overnight, get these clamps off, get this thing pulled apart, peel the tape off my laminations, get the edges squared back up. Now I've got nice clean material to go to my table saw. Now before cutting my staves, I've created some test material. I've milled down some MDF to the same thickness, which is a little over 1/2 inch. I'm going to use a sled on my table saw to cut my staves. Got a pretty basic sled here built of MDF with a hardwood fence screwed on at a 90-degree angle. My blade has been set at 11¼ degrees, or as near as I can guess. Here I've taken a piece of wood, I've cross-cut it, tipped it back over, and now I'm going to just tip one side and put them back together to check that that's a perfect 90-degree cross-cut. The final dimension of my stave constructed cylinder is critical. I don't have a lot of extra wood to play with here. The measurement of my tank is 2.65. The thickness of my material will estimate 2 pieces of that at 1 inch. That gives me an outside diameter of my wooden cylinder at 3.65. Multiplying that times pi, and then dividing by 16 the number of staves, that'll give me a rough width of stave at 0.72. Now, there's also going to be a piece of veneer in between my staves. My veneer material measures approximately 0.03. Subtracting that from my stave width, that gives me an approximation of 0.70 for my stave width. This is my starting point as I do my test cuts. Using a stop block with a matching angle and a hold down clamp that holds both the cutoff and my material, I can cut, flip, a series of these staves. Notice on the left side of my hold down, the side that holds the stave in place, there's a little piece of foam rubber. Notice also my fence has a dust trap on that lower edge, as does the stop block. This is key to being able to position the material accurately for each cut. It took me 3 tries to get the angle just right. My first attempt, they were too loose on the inside, too much angle. Second one, they were too loose on the outside, not enough angle. Last and third one was just right. Before proceeding to cut my good stuff, I wanted to confirm my diameter. So I inserted the veneers into my test pieces and checked this diameter. I can now proceed with my good stuff. I've marked these lines so I can maintain the same alignment. Here I'm just trimming off the rough end. Flip up against the stop block, use my hold down device to secure both halves, make another cut. Retrieve the pieces, flip, clamp it back in place, make another cut. On the retrieval, the blade is hidden within the fence, so I can retrieve these pieces after I've made my cut. By retrieving on the other side of the blade, I avoid that blade making secondary contact with my wood surface. So here's my first set of 16 staves. I'm going to do another dry fit just to make sure, and I'm going to put that veneer in there to check my overall diameter in comparison to that oil burner tank. Here I've put some extra bands on, and I'm checking the squareness before putting this tape on. It has to be square. A couple of wraps of this tough Gorilla tape will really hold things in place, getting ready to glue this together. Now the glue job will be done with a combination of rubber bands and this stretchy shrink wrap stuff. It's kind of like a saran wrap, but a little tougher. It stretches, it has elasticity. I'll probably use about 3 10-foot pieces of this wrapped around the cylinder after applying glue. The glue will be applied or spread with this little stick that's been tapered like a knife. So here's the glue job. First step, get all those veneers out of there because it's awfully difficult to get the glue spread to all the surfaces with the veneer in place. I'm using my special wooden knife to spread glue. I want to make sure I've got all the surfaces covered, and then I'll cover all the surfaces of the veneer. I'm working quickly, but I'm also being thorough, getting glue everywhere, pressing that veneer down into the seams. It's a methodical thing. You just can't miss any surfaces. I'll roll this up into a cylinder. It takes a while for that glue to migrate, so just one rubber band initially, and take a few moments to make sure those veneers have not slipped inward. A few more rubber bands, followed by this plastic wrap, this shrink wrap stuff. This stuff really puts a lot of pressure, a lot of accumulated pressure. You don't have to use the plastic wrap. You can use a lot of rubber bands or a few hose clamps. I just had that stuff and it worked very well. Here I'm just getting rid of all the glue squeeze out, checking for squareness, and here I'm getting rid of any unevenness so this will fit on a post that I'm going to create on the lathe. Here's a couple of pieces of MDF glued together and mounted with screws. I'm going to turn that tenon to fit the inside of my cylinder. This will automatically center things, give me a very strong means of gluing this in place. Here you can see I did the last removal by just holding the cylinder on there. I'm checking the roundness. It is round and it's running very true. So some glue and the cone from my tailstock holds it in place. Here's 3 of my cylinders. Now I've got one back on the lathe after a few hours of glue drying. Truing up things, getting it round and getting the end faced off. I need to hollow the inside. I need to hollow it to fit the oil burner tank. So a series of little bit of turning and checking. I'm almost there. Now it fits nicely. It doesn't want to be too tight. You want the wood to be able to move. I've divided the outside into 4 areas, and I've parted down through the layers just to expose the inner layer. That'll be part of the design, is turning a series of coves that exposes the wood that's underneath. That'll, create the lamination trickery effect, kind of a checkerboard thing with curved shapes. A little dowel with some sandpaper, some power sanding, getting this all cleaned up and looking good. Now I can actually part it off. I'm not done yet because I need to put a base on this. So using the jaws of my chuck, I can hold this. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on this. It is running true, but I'm a little nervous about putting outward pressure. So a bunch of rubber bands on there and a hose clamp will give that some added strength so I could put just a little bit more pressure on those jaw teeth. Now I can go at the bottom end, get rid of the MDF, and turn a little half mortise, a groove that'll accept a flat disc of wood that'll act as my base. So I'm fitting this up. My goal is to create a trap to encapsulate a thin disc of this yellow heart. I've mounted it with double-sided tape, and now I'm turning it to the right diameter. A little turning, a little testing. I want it semi-loose, about a 1/16 of an inch gap all the way around. The prep of this disc is pretty basic. A little turning, a little sanding, a few decorative grooves. Now this is ready for installation, but I need a keeper ring to hold it in place. So back to the chop saw. I've got a cross-cut piece of purple heart. This is vertical grain. I'm just confirming the width of my segment there, and just putting this together into a ring. The only difference is what you're looking at there at the top is in grain. This is a vertical grain segmented ring. Here I've got one of the MDF waste blocks that used to hold the cylinders. Anyway, I've turned a post, a little tenon there, very shallow, to fit the inside of this, just so I could glue it on and keep it centered. I've got to turn a little keeper ring that'll trap that disc. So it's just a matter of trial and error, turn and check, turn and check. I sanded the inside of this while I had the chance. This will fit on the inside. It's still a little tight, so back to the cylinder. That's a little more removal there. I marked one of the glue joints just so I can do a bricklay effect. The glue job is kind of tricky. You got to keep glue off that disc, so minimal glue on just the ring. You have to be really stingy with that glue. Press it in, put a little weight on it, let it sit for a while. Back to the lathe I am. Just truing up that bottom, pretty simple operation. A little power sanding before I can take it over, burn my name on the bottom, date it. The finish, I'm using a water-based poly finish. I'm going to put multiple coats of gloss. Just putting it on with a paper towel, wiping it dry. I can go back to my chuck, mount it in between every coat, and hit it with the sanding mop. My sanding mop here is a well-worn 320 grit, but I use it to buff between every coat. This water-based stuff dries fairly quickly. I can usually put a coat on every 2 or 3 hours. The final coat, I've gone back to satin just to put a softer final finish. The final step is to glue the tank in place. Pretty basic. I'm just going to use some standard household caulking, smearing a bunch inside the cylinder, putting my tank in there and kind of smearing it around, a little more around this top edge, ease that down in there, get rid of most of the excess, and then put that final decorative brass ring on place, and just to hold everything steady, a few rubber bands. Let this sit for a few hours. Now, if you don't need an oil lamp, well, the technique can be used for a variety of other items. Have fun exploring the world of lamination trickery.